World War II changed everything. It shaped our countries, our technology, even our daily lives. But what if it never happened? No Hitler, no Holocaust, no atomic bomb. Would the world be a peaceful utopia? Or would something far worse have taken its place? Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will change the way you see history forever. How close were we to preventing World War II? World War II wasn't inevitable. It was the result of a series of critical mistakes, missed opportunities, and a world too broken to see what was coming. The seeds were planted in 1919 with the Treaty of Versailles. Germany, humiliated and stripped of its power, was drowning in economic despair. The Great Depression only made things worse, creating the perfect storm for a leader like Hitler to rise. He promised revenge, prosperity, and a return to glory, exactly what a desperate nation wanted to hear. But what if history had played out differently? Imagine an alternate timeline where Hitler never came to power. His first dream wasn't world domination, it was art. He applied to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, hoping to become a painter. What if he had been accepted? No angry, rejected artist, no radicalization in the trenches of World War I, no Nazi party. Without him, Germany's political landscape would have looked completely different. Maybe another leader would have emerged, but the fanatical drive for war and genocide, likely gone. Europe might have avoided the bloodiest conflict in human history. Then there's another turning point. The moment Britain and France could have stopped Germany before it was too late. What if they had taken action in 1936, when Hitler marched into the Rhineland? At that point, Germany's military was weak. A single show of force could have shattered Hitler's confidence and possibly ended his ambitions before they spiraled out of control. But they didn't. They appeased him, thinking they were preventing war. Instead, they gave him the green light to push further. A world without World War II would be unrecognizable. No mass destruction, no Holocaust, no global power shift. Europe might have remained a collection of strong colonial empires, ruling over vast territories instead of collapsing into ruins. But without the war-driven technological advancements, the world might also have progressed at a much slower pace. The decisions that led to World War II were failures of leadership, but the war itself reshaped the world in ways that no one could have predicted. Would there be a bigger war instead? Avoiding World War II might sound like a perfect scenario, but history doesn't work like that. The world was already a pressure cooker, and without Hitler's war pulling major powers into conflict, that pressure would have exploded somewhere else. Instead of a global battle in the 1940s, we could have seen an even bigger, deadlier war unfold in the 1950s. Japan had already set its sights on expansion long before Hitler invaded Poland. By 1937, they were deep into China, committing atrocities that shocked the world. The only reason their conquest slowed down was because the US stepped in after Pearl Harbor. But in a timeline where World War II never happens, the United States has no reason to fight Japan. That means no economic sanctions, no military intervention, and nothing to stop Japan from expanding further. Southeast Asia, India, and even Australia could have fallen under Japanese rule, creating a Pacific empire that would have reshaped global power. But Japan wasn't the only threat growing in the shadows. Without the distraction of Nazi Germany, Stalin's Soviet Union would have had a clear path to dominate Europe. In reality, Hitler forced the USSR into a defensive war, draining their resources. But in a world without Hitler, Stalin wouldn't be defending. He would be conquering. Eastern Europe would have fallen much earlier, and communist revolutions across the globe would have gained unstoppable momentum. Instead of a divided Germany, there could have been a divided Europe, with the Soviet hammer crushing everything in its path. And with Stalin expanding west and Japan controlling the Pacific, the balance of power would have collapsed. The US and Britain wouldn't just sit back and watch. The Cold War wouldn't have been a long, drawn-out chess match. It would have been an explosive confrontation. The nuclear arms race would have kicked off in the early 1950s, not the late 40s. But this time, there wouldn't be a stalemate. The world could have plunged into a true world war, one fought with nuclear weapons instead of conventional armies. Skipping World War II wouldn't have led to peace. It would have delayed war, shifted the players, and made the stakes even higher. No World War II equals no superpowers? The modern world is shaped by two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. But without World War II, that power shift may never have happened. The war forced both nations to rise, adapt, and dominate the global stage. Take the war away, and the US might have remained an isolated nation. while the Soviet Union could have stagnated under Stalin's rule. The biggest winners? Britain and France, the same old empires that ruled the 19th century. Before World War II, the US wasn't the economic powerhouse we know today. It was still recovering from the Great Depression, and most Americans had no interest in foreign conflicts. If Japan never bombed Pearl Harbor, the US would have had no reason to join a global war. No massive military expansion. No wartime economy-boosting industries. No post-war boom that transformed the US into an economic giant. Instead, America might have stayed inward-focused, missing its chance to dominate global trade, finance, and diplomacy. Without the war, there's no Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe, no NATO, and no US military bases stretching across the world. The so-called American century might have never happened. The Soviet Union would have also taken a very different path. In reality, the war forced Stalin to modernize the USSR at lightning speed. Factories were built, weapons were mass-produced, and millions of Soviet citizens were thrown into the workforce. But without a war against Nazi Germany, Stalin would have had no reason to push for such rapid industrialization. The USSR might have remained a struggling communist state, with its economy lagging behind Western nations. No Cold War, no space race, and no nuclear arms buildup, just a slower, weaker Soviet Union with far less influence over the world. And in this alternate timeline, the old European empires might have stayed on top. Britain and France suffered massive losses in World War II, leading to the collapse of their empires. But if the war never happened, they would have held on to their colonies for much longer. India, Africa, and Southeast Asia might have remained under British and French control, delaying the wave of independence movements that reshaped the 20th century. The world wouldn't be led by the US and the USSR, it would still be controlled by the same European empires that dominated the past. World War II didn't just change who won and who lost, it rewrote the entire balance of global power. Without it, the modern world as we know it wouldn't exist. Would technology and society be 50 years behind? War is destruction, but it's also an accelerator. World War II forced nations to innovate at a breakneck pace, leading to breakthroughs that reshaped the modern world. Without that pressure, entire industries might have remained stagnant for decades. No global conflict, no rush to develop advanced weapons, no need for cutting-edge communications. In this alternate timeline, we might still be stuck in an age of rotary phones and telegrams. The war didn't just change battle tactics, it revolutionized transportation. Jet engines, which power modern aircraft, were perfected because of the desperate need for faster and more advanced fighter planes. Without World War II, commercial air travel might have remained a luxury for the ultra-rich, with slow, propeller-driven planes still dominating the skies well into the 21st century. The world wouldn't be as connected, and globalization would have been dramatically slower. But the biggest technological shift came from the Cold War, which never would have happened without WW2. The intense rivalry between the US and the USSR pushed humanity into the space age. The same missiles designed to carry nuclear warheads evolved into rockets that launched satellites, astronauts, and eventually entire space programs. No World War II, no Cold War, no space race, no moon landing in 1969, no GPS, and no international space stations. The digital revolution that followed? Delayed by decades. And here's where things get even more shocking. Without the Cold War, the internet as we know it might never have existed. The internet was originally a military project, designed as a communication network that could survive a nuclear attack. Without the fear of nuclear war, there's no urgency to build such a system. No internet, no AI, no smartphones. The entire digital age would have been stuck in limbo. World War II wasn't just a war, it was the single greatest catalyst for technological progress in human history. Without it, we'd be living in a completely different world, one that feels like it's frozen in time. Would the world be more peaceful or more dangerous? At first glance, a world without World War II sounds like a dream. No Holocaust, no mass destruction, no 70 million lives lost. But history isn't that simple. Without World War II, the world may have been far less stable, with smaller, deadlier conflicts breaking out everywhere. No global war doesn't mean global peace. It might mean endless, unchecked chaos. The United Nations was born from the horrors of World War II. It was created to prevent another global conflict, bringing countries together in a way never seen before. But in a world where World War II never happened, There's no United Nations, no international cooperation, and no system for resolving conflicts before they escalate. Nations act on their own, unchecked, leading to more regional wars and power struggles. Colonial empires would likely have lasted longer, leading to violent independence movements with no global oversight. The world wouldn't be united. It would be divided into dozens of smaller conflicts. Then there's the question of Israel. Without the Holocaust, the Jewish population of Europe would have remained far larger, but that also means there may have been no urgent push to create the State of Israel in 1948. The entire geopolitical landscape of the Middle East could have looked completely different, possibly delaying or preventing some of the most significant conflicts of the modern era. But at the same time, the absence of World War II wouldn't have erased deep-seated ethnic and territorial tensions. It would have only changed their course. And here's where things take a dark turn: nuclear weapons. The fear of total destruction is one of the biggest reasons why another world war never happened after 1945. The atomic bomb ended WW2, but it also forced nations into an uneasy balance of power. Without World War II, there's no nuclear arms race, no Cold War standoff, and no concept of mutually assured destruction. That might sound like a good thing, until you realize what it means. Without nuclear deterrence, war between major powers becomes far more likely. If the world still relied on conventional armies, large-scale wars could have erupted in the 1950s, 60s, or even today. Conclusion. So, was World War II a necessary evil? Did it prevent an even worse future? That's the uncomfortable question. The cost of World War II was unimaginable, but the world it left behind, for better or worse, shaped everything we know today. That's all for today. If you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to show some love by hitting that like and subscribe button.